Before you start setting any money goals for 2026, there's one really important thing that I want you to do. If you're new here, hello and welcome. I'm Sarah Edens. I'm a financial consultant and educator, and I'm so happy you chose to join me today. Would love if you could subscribe and join our growing community. And to all my current subscribers, hello, welcome back. It's so nice to see you again. So what is this one thing to do before you start setting your 2026 money goals? What I want you to think about is this. Really start to examine what were your friction points in 2025. So what were the areas that gave you trouble? And you can probably already think of a lot of things off the top of your head. Just as I'm talking, I'm thinking of a number of areas that I'm like, oh yes, that was a friction point, and that was an area where we went over budget, and that was a project that we didn't expect having to spend on right then. And so it's really good to just kind of sit down, and you can journal about this if you want to, or pull up your budgets from the year or your bank accounts from the year. But have a look at what kind of derailed your budget this year, if anything. If nothing did, that is wonderful and congratulations. But you know how life is sometimes. Sometimes you'll have years where there's no unexpected expenses and everything rolls on smoothly and you're not feeling stressed about money. Then there's other years where perhaps if you're feeling this the same way I am, the cost of living on everything has just gone up so much that suddenly the budget that you had that was working is no longer working so well. And something like paying for electric bills or for food is starting to gobble up far more than its fair share of your budget, and you've only got so much income to work with. And so take some time before we go into the new year, take some time and really try to identify the key friction points that really derailed whatever plans you had starting in 2025. I mean, it could even be something like figure out how to make more money this year. That was something I was working on as a personal goal all of 2025, and it's still something that I'm going to be working on going into 2026. But if you did make resolutions at the beginning of 25 and happen to write them down, maybe go back and review those and look and see what got in the way of you getting where you wanted to be. What interfered with your progress? What interfered with you accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish this year? Was it that trying to make more money with your business wasn't as successful as you were hoping, which is definitely one of the things I was contending with this year? Is it that you had big unexpected expenses come up that derailed your plans? Is it that you just weren't focusing on the right things, and so you weren't as effective or as efficient as you wanted to be? Just kind of what is it for you specifically? Your situation is obviously going to be unique and individualized to you. But if you can really think about what your friction points were in 25, just having that awareness will really help, because we cannot really improve things that we're not measuring. And so if you're able to, just go back and look and see what were the friction points, write them down, and then just take that mindfulness with you into the coming year. And then once you've really identified what your friction points were, what your sticking points were for 2025 that kind of derailed your financial progress or derailed your wealth building goals, then what I'd suggest that you do is start looking at a system, maybe pick the top one that was the biggest offender this past year, and then think about what's a system that you could apply to help solve that problem going forward into 26. I'm not talking about solving all your financial problems right this minute, but just maybe look at what was your biggest issue from this past year, and what's a system that you could implement so that going forward, hopefully it won't be such a friction point in 26, because that's really very, very important. If you have something that chronically gives you problems, it typically just indicates that you don't have a system in place, and no fault on you at all, and no judgment on you, obviously. But you may not have a system in place to deal with that issue, so the issue just keeps rolling over year and leaving you kind of in the same place financially and kind of stuck. And so having that very seamless system in place to cope with whatever your friction area is going to be very helpful. I will give a very practical example, okay? Just hopefully clarify what I'm saying a little bit more. So I have 3 geriatric pets, and one of the friction points from this past year was how much their healthcare costs, how much all of their medical expenses cost. They have special food that they're all on. They have all these little medications that they're on. And I don't mind doing it because I want to give them as good of an old age as possible. And we love our veterinary staff here in town. They are wonderful. So I feel like if I'm going to be spending an inordinate amount of money on something each and every year for a while, then there's nobody I'd rather support than our veterinarians because they are just angels. We adore them. So friction, though, from a financial perspective, is this massive amount of money that I've been spending the past few years as they've gotten older and just needed more healthcare. And so what I realized was I just need more money to pay for their care because their care isn't really something that they can do without. They have to have all their little blood pressure medicines and all their little specialty diets. Just like with people, it's the same way with pets that you tend to spend the bulk of your money at the end of the lifespan there on health issues and so forth. And so I realized, well, okay, there's kind of two issues here. It's like a cash flow issue. I need more money coming in to pay the vet bills. And then also, too, I just need to dedicate more of the current money that we're currently making to an account for them so that they're kind of building up a fund over the course of the year. And that way, when we have to do 6-month checkups or God forbid they have an emergency visit or something like that, then I have money that's in an account already for them. So they have their own little account. They've had one for years. And that way, as I've been contributing more to their account, and I've also been bringing in more income with one of my other businesses, which is fantastic, then that kind of goes to the pets fund. And then that way it doesn't become a crisis for the rest of my budget when they get sick because they already have a little fund. Now, did we run through it all this year? Yes, we did. And so that's the challenge is sometimes with these medical expenses, you do your best and then you just can blow right through it. But just from a practical perspective, I'm sure you have things you can think of as well that are friction points for you. So just think through kind of what's your version of that. What's your friction point? It's going to probably be different for you than for me. But what's your friction point? And then what's a system that you can come up with that will really help to alleviate the stress on you? Because I know I get a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach every time one of them is not feeling too well. And I'm like, I love them and I want them to be comfortable. And then in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking, oh my good Lord, how much is this going to cost this time? And so you kind of get this sense of doom anytime when elderly pets start feeling unwell because you just know how much the vet visits cost and how much hospitalizations cost. And unlike people, there's not a great option I think they have better options for pet health insurance now, but you have to buy it when your pets are really young. And I didn't do that for these guys. Unfortunately, I should have done that. But there's just not a lot of help. So you are definitely paying out of pocket for absolutely everything. And so just think through what are your friction points and what systems might you want to try to implement next year that would hopefully take the stress off of you. And then also too, if it's not something that you're kind of like committed to, like my pets, of course, I'm going to care for them until the end of their life and they go over the rainbow bridge. But if it's a situation where you can extricate yourself from it and just save yourself the stress and the hassle and the mental pain of having to spend money on something that you know ends up being a friction point, then maybe think about if there's a cheaper way you can do the same thing, if you even need the whatever it is that you're spending on or, whatnot. I mean, an example of this that I can think of is we had a time when we were first married, my husband and I did, that we got ourselves into a very expensive rental because we didn't know how to budget and we did not realize we couldn't afford this rental until after we'd signed a year lease. And so we were just wringing our hands and so stressed out about this. And it actually turned out okay because our landlords actually got foreclosed on. So that was not great for them. But they had rented the house to us while it was under foreclosure. So it wasn't even legal. This was back during the housing crunch of 07, 08, and people were doing this a lot in California. But anyway, so we had unknowingly rented a house that didn't even belong to them. It was in foreclosure. So when the bank came and put the sign out in the front yard on this rental, we were like kind of relieved because we're like, oh, good, now we can go find a cheaper rental. So we went and found a cheaper rental that was wonderful. We loved it, did everything we needed to do. It was like half the size, half the price. And just suddenly that weight on our shoulders from dealing with that financial burden of that year lease that we couldn't afford was just suddenly lifted. And we just felt so much better and we had so much less friction in that area. So really good to just pay attention to those things and be mindful mindful of them so that then you can make changes going into the new year in terms of identify the friction source. Look and see if you can find a system to cope with it, or if you can just eliminate it all together, depending on kind of what the situation is, or find a cheaper way to do the same thing, and then just keep moving forward. So that is my top tip for you as you're going into 26, to really do this first and identify those friction points before you start setting new money goals for 26. And then hopefully that will help guide and inform your 2026 financial goal setting process. If you enjoyed this video, I have another one here that I think you will also enjoy, and I will see you again soon right over there.